The Final Fantasy VII Remake will be episodic, and it's breaking my heart. So this has been pretty big news the last couple of days. I was really excited to talk about this. Mostly because Final Fantasy VII is a really big deal and has been for a very long time. It's a really big deal to me, so that's why it felt important to talk about this. But it's not important to me for the same reasons that you might be thinking. The reason I feel like it's a big deal is because I've never actually played Final Fantasy VII. And it's one of those titles that just seems so important to the history of gaming that I've always hated and regretted the fact that I haven't played it. Some of my best friends in the world are huge Final Fantasy VII fans, and I have 2 or 3 in particular who are just so in love with Final Fantasy VII, as a lot of people are. It's a big deal. I've heard about it since forever. I remember the advertisements and all the CG commercials and the gaming magazine ads way back in the day when the game was coming out, watching a couple of my friends play it at my friend's apartment, and kind of knowing that it was a big deal. Like, when Final Fantasy VII happened, it was a big deal. I was 17, 18 years old. Everyone was talking about it, and I always wanted to play it, but I never owned an original PlayStation. I was very kind of trying to be anti-PlayStation. I was sticking with the Nintendo 64, obviously, which was a smart choice. And also, this is a weird piece of history for me, the Atari Jaguar. I really backed the Atari Jaguar back at that time. So maybe one day I'll talk about that more, because I do still own an Atari Jaguar. But because of that, the game, it just passed me by. You know, I never had a chance to play it. And then I got more and more involved with gaming as the years went on, and I've always known Final Fantasy VII, like, some people say it's the best game ever made. You know, people talk about the best games ever made, and they talk about games like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VII. That's a game that a lot of people include in that conversation, and I know that there's a reason why people talk about it that way. So the last couple of years, everyone started talking about, might we finally get a Final Fantasy VII remake, Square's dropping hints and blah, blah, blah. And they would consistently say, oh, those aren't true, you know, we're never going to make a Final Fantasy VII remake, just don't keep your hopes up. And then we all know this year, they shocked the world when they announced and showed it, well, showed a teaser for it at E3 on Sony's stage for their press conference. And it was crazy, like, one of, like, the last things I think any of us ever expected to see. But because I never played it and I always wanted to, I was really pumped because I was like, hey, this will be a great reason for me to finally go back and play this game, because I really knew I was never going to probably go back and play the original PS1 version of that game, or even an emulated version on a PC or something. It's like, I know I'm not going to appreciate the full experience because it's going to be too dated. And even though I will be able to acknowledge the datedness of it, I wouldn't be getting the true experience. Just like if someone played Ocarina of Time for the first time today, it's still a great game, but it doesn't feel as, like, mind-smashingly amazing as when it was brand new. So the announcement happened, and I was like, dude, I'm going to play that shit. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Oh my god, I'll finally get to experience it in a whole new way for this new generation. It was this great big deal. And then at the PlayStation Experience this past weekend, an insane announcement about that game happened. After they showed a bunch of actual gameplay, which really looks freaking awesome, and then they have an announcement that the game is going to be released episodically. And even more cryptic than that, in a way where every single episode or every single release or update for the game is going to be different in its own way and tell a different part of the story. It's very confusing and cryptic. It doesn't make sense. It almost sounds like they're not telling the same Final Fantasy story and game that had existed, but they're doing something different. And it sounds like if they're going to make it episodic, is every episode told in a different way, where one might be like third person, the other might be 2D, the other might be top-down RTS turn-based. Like, what are they doing? We don't have details. They said, we're not going to give you any more details now. We're just telling you this. It's going to be episodic. Every episode is going to be different and give you a different spin on the story. And it's like, I don't know what that means, but you guys, I'm so sad because this has hurt my hype for this game so very much. And more than the cryptic comments that don't really let us know what the game is going to be like, you know the number one reason why I'm bummed about it. It is now not going to be a physical flipping release. It's going to be a bunch of stupid digital downloads. It's a bunch of buy a season pass so that every 5 months when a new part to Final Fantasy VII, which is already a completed game for the last freaking 18 years or whatever, like, you buy these season pass and you get all these parts and they're just going to download because you've already paid for them or whatever, and then you play it incrementally every few months. Like, god damn it, that is just so unfortunate. You know, and I say this as someone who does still like and enjoy some games currently episodically. Even though I don't like downloading stuff and buying digital games, like The Walking Dead and all the Telltale stuff, it's awesome. And the episodic format works for that. I can't say they pioneered it because it had sort of been done beforehand, but they perfected it and they made it applicable to today. And now there's a lot of different games and developers that are using that in different ways for their games, and that's really cool. But to do that for something like this game is just not a good idea, and it is really tempering my excitement. And I hate that it's tempering my excitement. I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing now. You know me. I would rather say, hey, you're going to release it episodically, whatever. You know, are you at least going to, once it's done, release it physically so that I can then go buy it? And I'll just wait this whole time. I don't care how long it takes them to release. I will buy the final complete physical form from a store where I can just go home, put it in my system, and then play it. Now, I do have to bring up this. The producer of the game who mentioned this piece of news, he did say that, you know, one of the reasons that they're doing this is for like disk space. You know, like the size of the game is like too big to fit like on a disk or something, you know, because the scope is so huge, and then they're updating it with this new graphics and new engine and all these things. And it's like, okay, like I get that, like I super get that, but I feel like it still doesn't make sense. Because A, you can put it on a couple of discs if you have to. Some games last generation, some Xbox 360 games had 3 or 4 discs. I think Lost Odyssey had 2 or 3. Blue Dragon had like 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken, and there might even been some other ones. Like, you know what? If it comes down to it, we'll deal with that. I don't care if it's on a couple of discs. And the other thing is, I still even struggle to believe that it would be so hard to fit a game like this on one disc. I mean, there are other huge games. Take a look at Skyrim or The Witcher, or like, you know, they're doing remakes of like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, huge Zelda games. Like, and the next Zelda, the Wii U Zelda, which is going to be freaking gargantuan, Xenoblade Chronicles that just came out, Fallout 4, all these games are on one disc. How is this the one game in the history of games that is just so huge, for this generation, I should say, that can't fit on 1 or even 2 discs? Like, what is that about? Those are the reasons why I don't really buy into that, you know? I will say I admire the fact that they showed gameplay at the PlayStation Experience this past weekend. The gameplay looked awesome. You know, it definitely makes me excited. I was surprised to see how much they've rebuilt that game. I kind of didn't know what to expect from the gameplay. Like, is it just going to be like the same, you know, the same way they do like the Resident Evil remake, where they just like kind of refiltered and redid all the graphics of the initial engine, all the camera viewpoints, the same character models, only looking better and rebuilt, you know, in the same way they did like I even just said, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, The Last of Us. Were they going to do that, where the game was just going to look the same but better? You know, and change the backgrounds, maybe, like hand-painted backgrounds? Or were they going to do something like what they did, where they rebuilt the whole thing? I did not expect them to rebuild the whole thing, but I will say, for all my disheartened, you know, like, unhappiness here, I really appreciate what it seems like they're doing. The fact that they're rebuilding it to look like, you know, what the recent Final Fantasy games have looked like is really admirable. So that's really cool, and I can see how it affects the disc space. I definitely get that. But I'm just personally not satisfied with this answer to release it episodically. Because, as a lot of people are pointing out, I think the main reason they're doing this isn't this bullshit disc space reason. It's because they can make more money, and like it's like selling more movie tickets for a movie, split it up into a bunch of parts, you know, do a bunch of digital downloads. It costs less than printing physical discs, all this other bullshit. And it's just, you know, I mean, gaming, there's a lot of trends in gaming when it comes to the digital side that obviously I'm not a fan of, and the release structures and the DLC structures and the pay for post-launch structures, all this stuff, you know, I'm not a fan of it. Some of it I can deal with, a lot of it I can't. And, you know, to take a game like this and infuse some of these unfortunate digital practices into this release, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel comfortable. It feels just kind of shitty, obviously. You know, most people are pretty unhappy about this. So that obviously tells you something. And I just feel like the fact that they felt they had to take this and do this same kind of structure with this game, to me, tells me that some of the wrong people are in charge of some of these big companies and these big decisions, and they're, you know, really, really hurting the hype for this release. And it's going to feel just so anticlimactic. Like, releasing the final game just on a disc on whatever launch day it launches, you know, in a year or two, and just boom, and it's this big release and everyone just has it and starts playing it. That is a proper climax and a build to excitement. The way I was just at the Battlefront and Fallout 4 launches, and those were huge and so much fun. And, you know, you can do that for this game too. But to release it where, like, episodes just show up online and you just get on your store and you're like, I'm going to buy my... Downloading, waiting for download, game is here, now I can play it for 4 hours before I have to wait 5 more months. That's not exciting. No one gets fucking excited for that. That is like the anti-excitement. It's the antithesis to what big gaming event moments are supposed to be. For me, my opinion, this is Rob's opinion, so no one lose their shit if you disagree, but for me, it is the absolute opposite of what gaming hype is supposed to be, and this, I think, is going to be probably a great game. So that's why I say I'm confused on what I'm going to do, if I should play it or not. I mean, I think the game's going to be great, but this is going to kill the hype, and it's going to stop a lot of people, potentially myself, from even playing it or experiencing it because of this, unless you release a physical disc after release like some companies have done. So, I don't know, man. That's what's going on with that. You know, I want to be excited for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I had been excited. I was excited when they showed the gameplay stuff, but then they followed up with that boneheaded announcement. If anything, they should have done the reverse, where you start low, you set the bar low with, here's the worst thing you could possibly hear. There you go. You put that shit out on the internet, let everyone freak out, and then say, oh, here's this beautiful gameplay that's 100 times better than you probably thought it was going to be. You're welcome. They could have done that, and they fucking didn't because they're stupid, and so now it's this weird episodic bullshit that nobody wants. So that's my rant. What do you guys think about this? Are you disappointed like I'm disappointed? Are you as jaded as I appear to be? Does this, change your excitement? Does it make it less? Do you think you'll play it or not play it because of this news? You tell me. I still don't know. I'm going to feel it out. Maybe they change their minds. Maybe the fans can fight back like we've done on a couple things the last year or two and convince this company to change its mind. And so that they say, hey, all right, you've told us what you want. We're just going to do it this way. Again, games like Skyrim and Xenoblade and Fallout come out on one disc. I haven't played Final Fantasy VII. Again, disclaimer, but I just can't imagine it's bigger than those games. If not as big, it's just more linear, which should make it even easier to put it on one disc. Who cares what the fucking graphics look like? That's why you install games nowadays. So I don't know. I just can't buy into this whole BS reason. So that's what's going on, man. I'm a little bit jaded. I'm really sad because I want to be excited, but we're going to see how it plays out over the next year or two, and we'll feel it out and see what Square Enix decides to do on it. So that's what's going on with that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Share your thoughts below. This is Rob of Little to Review, and I'll catch you guys next time on another video.